Good morning, everyone. By way of introduction, I'd like to introduce Greg Solomon, who is the Chief Executive Officer of McDonald's South Africa. Greg started his career as a civil engineer and later joined McDonald's SA in 1996 as a project manager. He was instrumental in building of many of McDonald's first restaurants. He believes that to lead, you have to have followed. And this is evidenced in his multifunctional experience across the organization, including supply chain, marketing, operations, and his current role as the Chief Executive Officer. For Greg, good leadership is the ability to influence others, build trust, respect, and align his team to a common purpose. His leadership has resulted in over 10 years of market share and profit growth, whilst managing a diversified franchise portfolio. Greg is married and has 2 adult children, and is passionate about family, wildlife, and health. Before we call on Greg to chat to us, we have been lucky enough to get our hands on some exclusive material showcasing how, during extraordinary times like the COVID-19 pandemic, leadership communication become a central tenet in instilling trust, confidence, and hope in a team. As the public lens shifts from crisis response to navigating the long-term strategy for social and economic recovery, let's take a look at how Greg has been authentically setting the tone and rallying the teams at McDonald's SA to emerge in a new normal.
Hello to the McDonald's South Africa family. It is with sad heart today that I announce that all 303 of our restaurants will close down on Thursday, the 26th of March. Make sure that we take care of our families, we take care of our homes, we take care of ourselves, that we're staying at home and we're keeping clean. We're at the end of week 1 of this lockdown, and I really appreciate the difficulty of this situation. We're making slow but good progress to ensure that we can weather the storm. We're now 3 weeks into this lockdown. We have strong plans in place to reopen in a responsible way. Hello McDonald's family. I've told you many times before that our lives will never be the same. For the first time, I'm speaking to you with a face mask. I'm here at McDonald's Stonebridge. I'm checking on the restaurants. I'm very excited the way they've opened. 7 weeks ago, we had a lockdown. It was traumatic for all of us. We opened some delivery restaurants, and the business is starting to build momentum now. So 60 restaurants have opened, I'm sure more to come, but we have to take care of our people so they can take care of our customers. We've got the mealie meal, we've got some SAMP over here as well, got some sanitizer, some hand washers. Keep yourself clean, keep your families clean, nice and sanitized. So here I'm with the operations manager, Cole. Hi everyone, I'm here in Lenasia McDonald's. I'm here in Victory Park. So hello to everybody. Hey everyone, I'm here in Jackals Creek. Say hello to the Jackals Creek team. I'm here in Marlborough McDonald's. It's a beautiful restaurant, small in size, and I was just asking Hilda, why did she make such an investment in McCafe? Do you think we made the right investment in McCafe? I just want to get a tip from Susan on QSC and why that's so important. Big focus on a Hub 1 McCafe and delivery, so good luck Jackals Creek. I hope you're all safe and I hope you're all healthy. Just remember that masks, hands and distance is what's got us through 2020. And it's masks, hands and distance that will get us through 2021. I want to tell you how proud I am of you this year and how we've bounced back from 2020. We still have a long way to go because we're carrying a lot of pain from the past. But it must be the balance of our patience and our persistence that will get us through the year. Take care, be safe, and see you soon.
Oh, well, hello everybody. It's a great honor and a privilege to be speaking to such a well-educated group, and I guess naughty to my communications team for giving the Wits team that little bit of insider video. But I'm happy that you saw it, because communication will control our destiny, and communication will control our relationships. And as leaders, very, very importantly, it's how we communicate and what we communicate at certain times that played a pivotal role during this very, very trying time. But allow me to share a few thoughts, a few insights, and maybe provoke you to ask me a few questions. In the next sort of 30 minutes, 30 minutes, I'll take you through one or two key things that are certainly around my mind, around the topic around leadership, and the topic around the situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. But let me tell you a little bit about McDonald's. I guess one of my jobs is to talk a little bit about McDonald's and educate. But I have to set the scene. I have to set the scene of where we've come and how we've grown, because it's not just about COVID. It's about our long-term relationship with our consumers in this country over many, many years. We turned 25 years old last year. We started in McDonald's in 1995, actually the 11th of November in 94. We came to McDonald's to Blackheath, and that was just after apartheid was abolished and stopped, and then McDonald's decided to make an investment into this country. And we brought drive-through. Many of you probably weren't driving cars during this particular point in time. I joined McDonald's some 25 years ago, so I joined just after that. And we brought drive-through, and now drive-through is part of our life and part of who we are as a South African fabric. In 2020, or just in the 2000s, we introduced breakfast, and breakfast is an interesting story. I guess if I would have asked all of us listening today, what should we bring to breakfast to McDonald's, it might have been 2 fried eggs, some bacon, and some toast. Well, we needed to eat breakfast in the car and in drive-through, and so we decided to bring the Egg McMuffin. And because we halal in all our restaurants, obviously we've got chicken and turkey on our menu. And that created breakfast, and it's now nearly approaching 15% of our total business. It took us certainly the first 10 years to open up our first 100 restaurants. And then in 2005, we decided 24/7, another very interesting story, another crossroads in our lives. And I remember the late Ishmael Moloko, one of our franchisees in Bruma, and Mr. Peter Moyanga, I debated it with them and said, I don't think we could do 24/7. At that point in time, I think I was a director of operations, and they said, no, listen, Greg, let's go to Philadelphia and downtown Chicago, and we witnessed markets that were in much more troubled markets than South Africa, and we took a decision to go 24/7. We got a really tough decision to do, is when we come out of COVID, are we going to go back to 24/7 again? Are customers going to frequent that way? And so these things are changing all the time. And then in 2009 through to 2010, all the way up to 2015, we won a boatload of awards on best company to work for. We made sure that our packaging was biodegradable and local South African. And we crossed over 10,000 employees in 2011. In 2012, we launched our charity, RMHC, Ronald McDonald House of Charity. Many of you don't know about this charity. Some people launch charities because they want people to know them. And we just want a charity to do good. It's an internal feeling charity. We know that we can't bring healthcare to young families, particularly children. But what we know we can bring is we can bring hope, we can bring love, and we can bring family togetherness. And so we've set up a Ronald McDonald, almost like a little hotel at the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital. And we've got some rooms, Ronald McDonald rooms, that are sitting in strategic hospitals, where moms can take time away when their children are sick in hospitals and sit in a comfortable environment. And if we can bring them closer, and dads as well, closer to their kids when the kids are sick, we know we're making a difference. And maybe in the next couple of years, we'll talk more about this charity. But at this point in time, it's about serving those moms and kids. And we serve about 7,000 to 8,000 moms and kids every single month through this charity. And then we decided as well, as you know, my engineering background is how can we contribute more? We designed a light steel frame building, and this took out a lot of carbon footprint from our buildings. And in 2014, 2015, we started to serve more than 8 million customers every single month. Our journey to contribute to the world and the sustainability of the world started around about that 2013 mark, where in 2015 we focused on 3 main components: waste, electricity, and water, and made sure that in everything we do, in all our future designs and all the way we thought in our buildings, we reduce our demand and consumption, and obviously demand on the worldwide load. In 2016, 2017 through to 2020, it was the digital revolution. But I want to talk to you a little bit about strategic planning in a few minutes' time, where we'll talk about if you were there, if you were thinking about the future in 2016, 2017, you were able to weather the storm so much more. But if you weren't thinking about the future, if you hadn't thought about the world of the 4th industrial revolution, digitalization, then unfortunately this COVID pandemic has caught us in a very difficult time, and the recovery is going to be very, very long. So in 2018, we crossed over 250 restaurants, and we now are 311 restaurants. We're growing at about 25 restaurants year on year. In 2019, we opened up our very own hamburger university. So skills, transfer, training, education. In McDonald's, we've got a saying, when you're green, you're growing. So everybody in the organization needs to be learning something at some point in time, from me all the way down. And there's only 9 hamburger universities in the world. We were the number 9th, and we certainly don't teach how to make a hamburger. That we can teach in the restaurants. But what we do is we teach about leadership, we teach about management, we teach about coaching, we teach about leading teams, and we teach about tech now. It's very important, general management skills. The person that starts at McDonald's will come through Hamburger University, will pretty much, in my little bit of poetic license to the professor and everybody and the astute educators over here, would come through with pretty much like an MBA by the time they finish coming through Hamburger University. And then between Uber and Mr. Delivery and our very own Scoot, we have 3 different platforms that are now delivering food to our customers. And we're sitting at about 16,000 employees at this point in time. So I thought I would just pave the way of who McDonald's is and why we've been here for so long in the South African world. Now, we clearly find ourselves in a crossroads. In a crossroads, there's decisions to make. Do we go left or do we go right? What are those type of decisions, and what should we make? Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are free of our choices, but we are not free of the consequences of those choices. So we need to choose very wisely. It's very important that we sanitize the noise and the news that's coming our way, and all the social media that we're listening to, and the opinions from our people and from our customers. And we bring this down into a focus, and we make our choices wisely. Because the choices that we are going to make today in our businesses, in our lives, in our families, in our careers, and in our educational path, all right, will either materialize in points of joy or will come back to haunt us. So very, very clear, careful message for us right now. Think more carefully about the choices we make in our lives, be it business or be it personal. There's no doubt in any business, we need to make decisions. In any business, we talk about leadership, but none more than in the last 2 years, where we need to talk about brave leadership. Our people are looking for our leaders to lead, visible leadership. And visible leadership could be in our restaurants, but visible leadership also now is in social media and on the camera, like I'm talking to you today. The world's changed in the way the world will never be the same. And so we need to adapt very, very quickly on how we communicate. But brave leadership is important. And our people want to see leaders leading from the front, taking certain decisions, being responsible, being accountable, and most importantly, being authentic. And that way they would follow and build trust and build respect, which I want to talk to you about in a few minutes' time. So brave leadership is at the center of how we should lead our businesses during a point of crisis, not absent. present. So this is a restaurant that we built just before COVID. It's in Sammy Mark's, downtown Pretoria. Now, many of you would have thought if you're going to build an icon restaurant, why don't you build it in Century City in Cape Town, Umhlanga Rocks, or maybe in Sandton in Johannesburg? But here, McDonald's South Africa went to Sammy Mark's in downtown Pretoria and built an icon. This particular one isn't a drive-through. If you zoom in closely, if your screen's big enough, you'll see the beautiful seating and decor, modern and contemporary. This is not a fast food place. This is a place that strives to serve good food fast, and how we change our brand and how we change our thinking. Just in the front left, you'll see a little yellow square there. That's our McCafe, which is a bean to cup coffee, Arabica bean, cappuccinos, chai tea lattes, toasted low GI paninis and chicken rolls. You would have thought McDonald's is about Big Mac and French fries, and now we're serving low GI chicken sandwiches, paninis, and coffees. And if you look carefully through the window, you'll see some self-ordering kiosks or computer screens where customers can interact with us on a digital perspective. This was long before COVID. This journey started 3-4 years ago. I guess I'm not saying McDonald's could have predicted, but a modern and progressive company that is in tune with where the world is evolving, all right, needed to see this. But the message is not about this funky McDonald's. The message is about the consistency of a brand. You see, what apartheid did to South Africa, it segregated people and it split us all over the country, and it created places where people have to migrate and travel every single day. The worst thing our brand could be is schizophrenic or different in different places. So you're going to see this brand, whether you're in Southgate, in Johannesburg, whether you're in Sammy Mark's in downtown Pretoria, whether you're in Tawandu, or whether you're in Century City in Cape Town. Our brand is consistent, a consistent look and feel across a rainbow nation, because that's who we appeal to. We've worked 25 years to get this brand to be a brand that's indicative of the South African population. And that's why this brand will be the same wherever you are. So I'm not a professor or an expert in COVID, but through my eyes, mainly from a business perspective, it has 3 phases. We obviously had that hard lockdown that we experienced some 400 days ago. And then this long sort of in and out of wave 3, wave 2, and wave 1. And clearly we're living through wave 3. And this is a very, very trying time for all of us, sitting at home, probably listening to this webinar and going through these different emotions. And the best thing that we can do, like I said to my people, is keep our distance, wash our hands, keep our faces closed, and stay at home where at all possible. But I guess it's all about predicting what's going to happen once we're through wave 3. Please God, there's no wave 4, and we've had our vaccines and we're back to normal. Is there going to be a normal? Are we going to get back? And my fundamental message to my team, and maybe my fundamental message to you as the audience listening today, is what COVID's done for us as business and environment. It's basically said what was going to happen, what we were predicting that was going to happen in 2030 is now going to happen in the next 2 years. It's the pace of change that we're going to have to get used to. It's the pace of how the world is moving towards the new norm is what we're going to have to. We were going to get there in 2030. We were going to get to battery operated cars and social interactions through Zoom calls like we are on today. But it's going to happen so quick. It's happening as we're speaking. And so the question that I have for my team and the question that I have for you as the audience, are you ready for the pace of change? Are you ready for changing yourself as a leader, for changing yourself as a contributor to the society? Are you modern and contemporary? Are you relevant? Do you have the relevant skills to be able to operate in year 2030 tomorrow? So for many of us, Madiba is our hero. He set the foundation for this country to prosper, for many ways in how we interact with each other. But the message I want to send you on Nelson Mandela is the concept of influential leadership. Now, I've said often, many times and publicly, that we don't have a leader problem in this country. We don't have a leader problem in our businesses or in our families. We have a leadership problem, and every single one of us are leaders. Let's talk about this concept called influential leadership. I guess as a bit of an engineering nerd, I have formulas for everything. And I want to take you back. I want you to choose somebody in your life, anyone, your boss, your subordinate, your spouse, your significant other. I want you to pick somebody. Just, you don't have to mention it, but put somebody in your mind while we do this exercise. And I want you to rate that person out of 10, where if 10 was absolutely outstanding and 1 was totally unacceptable, I want you to rate that person on how much you trust that person out of 10. And then I want you to rate that person on how much you respect that person out of 10. Okay, you got your rating? So for me, I've chosen my person, 8 and 8. So I've got an 8 and 8 score, 8 out of 10 and 8 out of 10. You might have a 5 and a 10 or a 10 and a 10. I want you to multiply those two numbers together now. 8 by 8, all right, or 10 by 5. 10 by 5 is 50. If that person didn't score more than 75, that person's not influential in your life, or not as influential as that person should be. Now, the moral of the story is not what you will rate people. It's about what people will rate you. What would people rate you on trust and on respect? Now, you build your trust by delivering on your promise. And you build respect by teaching somebody something new today, or contributing towards somebody, or to a mission, or to a community, or to a world. So if we could all deliver on our promises and we could all contribute or teach, we could be the influential leaders that Madiba once was when he was with us. So I spoke a little bit about, when I was telling you the story about McDonald's, and hopefully you could see the evolution of who we were, starting off in Blackheath McDonald's selling French fries and Happy Meals, and now selling paninis and toasted low GI breads with a cappuccino or an espresso. But this is about strategic planning now. What I'm trying to articulate, like the chess master, is everybody has a plan. The question is, what plan do you have as an individual or as a business? Do you have a 1-year plan? Do you have a 2-year plan? Do you have a 3-year plan? So for McDonald's, I'm pushing the team to have a look at what does our business look like in 5 years' time? Or where are we going to be in 7 or 8 years? You see, when you can have a long-term vision of where your organization needs to be, where your consultants business needs, or where your career needs to be, you can peg this flag in the ground and start to have a mission every single time you wake up in the morning. Now, if it's not a business, maybe it's a personal goal. I talk about big dreams and maybe small steps. The small steps we can talk about every single day. Now, the plans can change, but my question is, do you have a plan? Do you have a strategy? Is it big? Is it a big dream? And is it far enough? Is it out there 5, 6, 7 years in your life? Because if you don't, and you're looking at it and you're living life day by day, week by week, year by year, it's going to be very difficult for you to think about the ambitions that you want to achieve over the next decade. But like a chess master as well, you need to have contingency plans. And so we spend a lot of time with me and my senior leadership team talking about the contingency plans that never materialize, the plans that we never get an option to execute. Because you got a plan A, and if you hit a T junction and you can't be, you've got to be able to trigger what your plan B is. And so I'm not asking for us to paralyze ourselves with heaps and heaps of consultants and people planning contingency plans around the side. But what I am saying to you in business and in life, if you've got contingency plans and you've thought through what would happen if all our restaurants burnt down, what would happen if we lost electricity to all our restaurants, what would happen if we couldn't transport our people to all our restaurants. If you had those contingencies in place already and COVID-19 came, where we couldn't get our people to our restaurants, where we had to stay at home, where we had to communicate with people through different mediums, not thinking about something like COVID, no one could have ever projected it, but thinking of contingency plans to major derailers in your organizations, you would have been able to respond in a nimble way, in a timeous way, in a speedy way to what this virus has thrown to us. And thank goodness McDonald's has got strong, robust contingency plans. We were able to, I mean, we closed 300 restaurants. We put 16,000 people at home for 2 months. That's quite a big thing. And thank goodness we haven't retrenched anyone. Thank goodness everybody's kept their jobs. Thank goodness everybody's safe. Thank goodness everybody's back in McDonald's selling what we love the most. So we can talk about all these big things, these contingency plans, and these things that we think about in our war rooms for so long. But that's the preparation that makes us so nimble. But typically, in times of crisis, what's more important is focus. What's more important is how do you get 16,000 people to rally around 3 or 4 things only, or perhaps just one thing. In McDonald's, we have a principle, almost a value called QSC and V, quality, service, cleanliness, and value. And I challenge any one of you, go into one of our restaurants, call for the shift manager or the restaurant manager and say, I was listening to Greg, what's this thing called QSC? And I have full confidence they'll be able to tell you it's about quality, service, cleanliness, and value. And there's a big emphasis on quality for us because it's about hygiene, it's about safety, it's about wearing hand masks, wearing gloves and wearing masks and sanitizing our hands. So we sort of had that. But that was the one consistent message that I wanted to deliver all the time. It's always about a quality, service, and cleanliness. But the question to you is, what is your one message? What is your one message in your business that you could ask anyone in your organization? What does this organization stand for? If everything else fails, what could we unite against? And I think that's a challenge to all organizations, but focus certainly helps in times of crisis. So we've spoken about what COVID would take year 2030 and bring it into year 2020. But I want to talk to you about something called 10X, or the power of 10, if you want to call it that way. It's just a business philosophy. This is more in business, but I suppose you could apply it to life a little bit. And my viewpoint is this, that once something changes tenfold, you have to fundamentally change the way you do things. You see, when your customers around your business are changing, faster than the internal change in your business becomes obsolete. When something changes 10 times, your business needs to be reacting. So take something like deliveries. It's a big part of our organization now, also about 15% of our total business, which is quite large. If you got 5-10% of our business, it's a large component of the organization. But as that business changed tenfold, we needed to put in a delivery champion, an executive that controls delivery, a whole infrastructure. We had to change our CapEx and our investments into the digital portfolio. Fundamental things needed to shift in an organization. You could also say, as a leader, since we're talking about leadership, if you are leading one person, you're a certain type of leader. If you're leading 10 people, you have to fundamentally change the way you lead. You can't lead 10 people the same way as you led one person. You need to evolve as well as a leader, and your organization needs to evolve fundamentally. And that's why you'll often find CEOs in organizations that are founders of business, but yet they're no longer the CEO of a business 10 years later. Great creatives, great founders, but the business has evolved to such a point in time where we have to have a change of guard and a change of leadership. And that's the power of 10. 10 employees to 100 employees, 1 million EBITDA to 100 to 10 million EBITDA. Fundamental shifts in organizations need fundamental changes in the way we manage businesses and the way we lead people. So these are the McDonald's values. We just launched them recently. Typically, we wouldn't share this type of components, but I see that they are out on the web somewhere. So we serve, we're all about inclusion, we're all about integrity, we're all about community, and we're all about family. And whilst it's not so important of me explaining what values are, we have KPIs in our lives, but we are diverse in who we are. We are diverse in where we come from. We are diverse in how our thinking is, and that's what builds a powerful McDonald's business. But what needs to knit us together is our values and our culture. What needs to give us purpose and mission is our values and culture. And so I spend a lot of time, if I could change my title from Chief Executive Officer to Chief Culture Officer, it could probably be more appropriate for who I want to be and the type of role that I want to play in the organization. I know that we can hold this business together if we have a common purpose and a common mission. One of our family components is called the three-legged stool. Our franchisees, us as our employees, and our suppliers. Balancing relationships is so important. You know why I'm so opinionated on why relationships are so important? Let me give you an example. So my son is studying business science at UCT's in Cape Town at the moment. And I'll tell you a personal story. And when we were in hard lockdown, we were able to get him back to Joburg, and we had a terrible fight. And two grown men, a 22-year-old and a 51-year-old, had a really, really terrible fight. And it wasn't great. Two grown men crying. But after 3 or 4 hours, we sort of patched each other. We gave each other a hug, and it was father and son again. How could two people go through such a conversation and yet mend it within 24 hours? And that's because we've got such a deep relationship of a father and son, such a strong bond with each other. And so in corporates, often we don't have that, or in business relationships, often we don't have that, where it's very transactional. And so we'll send each other WhatsApps, or we'll send each other emails. Get to know each other a little bit more in organizations. It makes giving brutal, hard, frank, authentic feedback to each other so much better. And once you can move beyond that, it makes your organization so much more powerful. So the three-legged stool is not about making everybody happy. It's about making everybody equally happy. And that's the fundamental difference. Equally happy comes with compromise. So in an organization that's not innovating, this picture maybe doesn't tell the story that I want to tell, but it's about the light bulb, I suppose, which was one of the unbelievable innovations of our world. But in an organization that stopped to evolve, in an organization that stopped to innovate, I think is naive in many, many ways. So we need to continue to innovate and evolve our organizations. Now, innovation is not necessarily about doing something new. Innovation is often about doing the same thing differently. Very important. Same thing differently. Balance. This is where we are in a point of crisis, when we've got so many things that are happening in our lives. We've spoken about focus. We've spoken about the power of 10. We've spoken about contingency plans. We've spoken about choices and the consequences of those choices. But isn't it the balancing act of our patience and our persistence, of our customer loyalty and our profit bottom line, of everything in our lives is this fine balance? Choose the 5 most important things like a juggler and juggle them. Unfortunately, we're not strong enough to juggle 10 things. And it's that fine harmony and balance. When to be able to turn up the profitability, when to be able to be a little bit more sympathetic and authentic to your people. This is the art of leadership 101, I guess, is the balancing of the different forces that approach us in our businesses. And so I'll leave you with a final story. Go back 2015, I think it was 2014, when I said to our people, our restaurant managers, maybe a bonus, maybe it's not all about remuneration. If we hit these 3 KPIs at the end of the year, a people KPI, a revenue KPI, and a profitability KPI, you book yourself on this boat, I think it was to Mozambique and back with me for 5 days. And at that point in time, I think we had 158 restaurants, about 121 or 120, just over 120. I think it was 121 at that time. Restaurant managers met their KPIs. So sometimes it's not just about remunerations and bonuses. It's about purpose, about vision, and it's about having a dream to be on a boat for the first time. And so we sailed there and back for 4 days on this massive ship. But the moral of the story is, again, not about the 121 people that were on the ship with me. The moral of the story was, I looked at the ship and I was standing at the bottom of the ship, like 3 or 4, 5, 10 rugby fields of ship. And I asked myself the question, I said, how does ship turn? How does somebody turn a shift, left or right? And clearly it's not somebody holding a big wheel and turning like a whole city. I didn't have internet connection, but as soon as I got home, I Googled, how does a ship turn? And I got to these days, ships turn with jet engines. They've got modern jet engines, and they jet them left and right. And I guess there's that big rudder at the bottom. But in the old days, we had a rudder. But inside the rudder was a little baby rudder called the trim tab, TRIMTAB, trim tab. And when you turned the trim tab left, the rudder turned right, and the ship went left. And I guess the moral of the story is, we can talk about all these big things, and COVID's really, really troubling for us, but it's often the small things in life that make the biggest difference. The hello, the welcome, the how you feeling, the happy birthday, the Merry Christmas, the messages on Ramadan. These are the small things that we have to give to our people and these are the small things that give hope and give love. Thank you very much for listening to me for the last 30 to 40 minutes, and I really look forward to taking some questions now. I'll stop to share.
Wow, Greg, thank you so much for that very insightful presentation. I think I wouldn't be too wrong to say that a lot of people have had McDonald's in their lives since they were born. And even much longer before that. So I think it's always on everybody's mind what happens behind the doors, what really goes into McDonald's. We do have a few questions that we've received for now. We've got 4 questions, and we really invite you all to send your questions through. I'll take the first question that we've received from a Molefi Lebone, and he wants to know, he says, in the last few years, you have introduced AI where customers can order and pay for their meals, thereby reducing the need for more employees. How do you navigate the point where you have to retrench as technology replaces some jobs?
Good question. We get it a lot. And the question's not about using AI or technology to eradicate jobs. The question is, how do we use AI and technology to create more jobs, and more jobs that universities haven't even thought about? Do you know what I'm saying? So that's our biggest challenge. So our biggest challenge is not, so take that self-ordering kiosk where you actually have to order. So we just redeployed our labor into hospitality. We thought we had an opportunity with hospitality. We thought McDonald's was becoming a little bit too more fast foody, and we wanted to put some people on the floor. So when you walk into McDonald's now, you'll be greeted by a guest experience leader who has now been educated on how to be hospitable with our people. Our IT department has grown so far, so we've moved more people into technology. So thank goodness right now, McDonald's is actually net recruiting about 700 people every single year. So we're growing and we're redeploying our people and giving our people more skill sets. And artificial intelligence and tech is more diverting and growing skill sets than actually retrenching right now for McDonald's.
Then we've got Tepo Siale, who wants to know, on the concept of delivery, does McDonald's own the scooters that it uses to get deliveries done, or do you use the Uber concept where the scooter is owned by the driver? And what are the cost implications, whatever the answer is?
Yeah, so we have delivery on. Just want to make sure you can still hear me fine, eh?
We can hear you, yeah.
So we got delivery in 3 different platforms at this present moment. We have Mr. Delivery and Uber, and they operate like any other platforms. So we give our food to Mr. Delivery, and they deliver it to you for a charge. And then we've got this new concept called Scoot. Scoot is growing. It's only 4 or 5 months old. It's a McDonald's delivery service. It delivers McDonald's only, and you should try it out as well. www.scoot.co.za.
Okay, we look forward to trying that out. Personally, Greg, I'm wondering, what are some of the differences that exist in your branches or in your different shops around the world, given cultural and religious and preferences and tastes that exist in different corners of the world? What are some of the more interesting differences that exist in menus around the world?
Well, we have in McDonald's, believe it or not, freedom within a framework. About 30% is the framework. Don't change the framework. French fries, nuggets, Big Mac, cheeseburger, Mac chicken. Those are just standards around the world. It's amazing. You can go to Germany, you can go to Hong Kong. It's the Big Mac, it's the quarter pounder that sells the most. But then we got quite a lot of freedom. 70% worth of freedom. We've got the Bori burger in South Africa. We've got the chicken fold over here in South Africa. We've got the toasted, as I said, the toasted low GI McCafe products only in South Africa. We have, we've just launched the Oreo shake. We've got the Oreo McFlurry everywhere, only in South Africa. What else we got? So we got some really cool. We got our breakfast products. The scrambled egg product is a product in South Africa. So we want to customize. But look, the world is a global world. We call it glocal, don't we? And you don't want to come to McDonald's for sushi. You know us. We're a hamburger business. You want to come to us for great hamburgers. And so the French fries, the Big Mac, the quarter pounder. You know what's quite interesting? We got this product called the McFeast on McDonald's. Next to the Big Mac, it's the second big seller. So go out and try McFeast.
Okay, I've got someone here asking a question around how much of what you do is still, centered around drawing the kids in. I know personally I've got 2 little ones, and sometimes I have to change my route completely so I can avoid driving past the big yellow M. And how much of what you do is still centered around drawing the children in? And if I can add to that, how much of what you make, let's say, per month or annually is from those, what is it, the kiddie meals, the terms just escaping, but the kiddies meal.
So we're around about that 15% mark again with our kids business. So you'd think, wow, you would have thought it would 80%. Our business in the last 10 years has grown on young adults, sort of that age group between sort of 17 and 30. That's been our fastest growing place. And I think people have probably could argue to say maybe the Happy Meal eater 20 years ago is now the mom, and she understands, or the dad, and she understands what she had, and now she's giving that back to her kids. We love our kids, but if you look at that picture that I showed you about Sammy Marks, you had a few families that say, "Oh, I don't know if our kids can play here." So we're so big now with the number of restaurants that you'll find restaurants that are more focusing on families and play places. There's downtown restaurants like Sammy Marks. It's young adults. It's cool. It's coffee. It's chill. It's internet connection. It's checking my emails. But yeah, it's indicative of the South African. About 15% of our businesses is young kids, sure. Happy Meal kids.
A Happy Meal, that's the term. Okay, and Henk wants to know, as CEO, what are the things that you worry about and what keeps you up at 3 a.m. in the morning?
Well, thank you, Henk. I hope I articulated myself a little bit in my presentation, but they would be around system alignment. Very important for me. I spend a lot of my time aligning my system. You come out with a vision from as a CEO. The vision is culminated from great ideas from our people. I just need to choose which was the best idea. If you think as a CEO you need to come up with all the ideas, well then I think you're going to come up with one great idea. So me, it's about picking the right idea, making the right choices, making sure my team's aligned, motivated, and unlocking potential. My job is to unlock potential. If I can unlock potential, then the rest is history.
Okay. And Brent wants to know, how do you deal with anxiety, stress, and especially when faced with adversity?
Anxiety and stress is all over, and it's in our lives all the time. I've also got a coach as well. And I won't mention him by name, but I mean, he helps me. I had a little session with him this morning. So to have a coach, it's pretty cool to have a coach. Everybody needs a coach. It can be a friend, can be a mentor, can be a group of mates just sitting together and talking in a controlled environment. But I think what works for me on the stress thing is you've got to have a routine. And you got a Joanne DeVette, one of my executives in my team. She talks about, she's a mom with 4 kids, and she talks about not balance. She doesn't like my balance. She talks about harmony as a working mom. And by the way, for those that don't know, McDonald's is 60% women in our organization. So we're very, very proud of the equality on where we are. But I'll just throw that out to all the ladies out there in McDonald's. The women are well represented in our organization. But it's about routine and making sure that your family, yourself, and your business comes into one schedule. That's what it is for me. So my team know that between sort of 6:30 and 7:30, I'm probably doing gym of some sort or yoga, and they mustn't interrupt me. And they know that I'm doing that and do that. And even if you're stressed, get that routine, get that physical, go for a long walk, make sure you balance and bring it as part of the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's been particularly important, especially now where we're disrupted between working from the office, working from home. School runs look a little bit different. Kids are in and out of school and so on. So I think to get that harmony and routine is particularly important. Thank you for that question. Mayanga says, hi Greg, speaking of being ready for 2030 tomorrow and contingency plans, if not for COVID, what were the areas of development or growth that McDonald's was looking forward to for 2020 and 2021?
Well, we were definitely embarked on the digital journey. There's no doubt about that. Not so much on robotics. I mean, we may lead from that perspective, but certainly digital and the way we interact. You know, marketing, we used to talk just 3 years ago, we just used to talk about one big TV ad to 1 million people. Now it's 1 million customized messages to 1 million people. So we were already on that path. And that's why I'm saying, whilst COVID hurt us, it hurt us big time. Closed down, 300 restaurants for 2 months and then come back slowly, there's no doubt. But our recovery was a V-curve recovery. For those that weren't thinking about the 4th industrial revolution, for those that are not thinking about a digital transformation, for those who are not looking about an inclusive working environment, and when I say inclusive in cutting across the gender and the color balance, for those who are not talking about those progressive conversations, equality, inclusion, then unfortunately your recovery is not a V-curve. Your recovery is going to take much longer.
Right. Okay. And how does McDonald's help? This is from Philemon. How does McDonald's help small businesses in their supply chain? What proportions do they make up for your portfolio? And he says, great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Philemon. Look, McDonald's is a big brand. So to whoever's got the beef supply or the chicken supply in McDonald's is probably not a small guy. But the cool thing about McDonald's is we've also got the toilet paper guy and the till roll guy and the landscaping lady. And we've also got the painter and the builder, and we've got all of that. So our supply chain is really, really long. And we have a very stringent supply chain philosophy of being local. We are now nearly 90% local. All our products are local. We do import 1 or 2 things and giving the small guys a chance. It is more difficult to get into McDonald's to supply us beef because obviously that's a hard contract. But you got to start off somewhere. Maybe you can start off with something smaller. So it does give opportunities to local South African entrepreneurs, and our transformational strategy down our supply chain and making sure that our supply chain is also indicative of the South African population. As we empower young Black entrepreneurs in our organization through our supply chain. Not easy. It's easier said than done because there's so many people knocking on our door, but it's at the center of our focus.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear that, Greg. I think more than ever, a lot of people are going to be looking for these sorts of gigs, so to speak. A lot of people have taken knocks in terms of employment, in terms of their own entrepreneurship endeavors during this COVID time. We've got another question about franchises. And Anonymous wants to know, how does McDonald's determine who's a suitable franchisee, and what proportion of McDonald's 311 stores are owned by franchisees?
Well, I'm going to surprise you on the statistic a little bit, but I'll let you know that over 50% of our restaurants are company owned, just over 50 and just under 50% are franchise. Not easy to become a franchise because we don't franchise a lot. If we're going to grow and 50 or 60% of those restaurants are going to go to company, there's going to be very few franchise opportunities. So unfortunately, lots of people wanting to become a franchisee would love to make them there, but I'm spoiled for choice. And so when we do, every year make 1 or 2 new franchisees, unfortunately, we've had to select them from thousands. I wish I could say I was making thousands of franchisees every year, but that's not the case.
I'm interested to know personally, and this is a question from me, not in the Q&A, in your past experience, all these years working with different franchisors, what have you noticed to be, what do you think is a common characteristic that the more successful franchisors tend to have? What are some of the leading or best characteristics for a successful franchisor?
So I'm very vocal on the difference between a franchisor and an entrepreneur. So my franchisees, if any of them are listening on the call, will also believe that. I believe that they are entrepreneurs, but there's a fundamental difference between an entrepreneur and a franchisee. And that fundamental difference is that the entrepreneur owns both their brand and their business. And the franchisee owns their business, but not their brand. And so we as a corporation, we own the brand. We are responsible for the yellow arches. We are responsible for the look and feel. We are responsible for the strategy, for the menu, for the new beautiful McFlurry that's coming out, or whatever the story is. And the owner operator, it's pretty much like a soccer team, isn't it? Eh? So we know that we're the defender, and the franchisee is the striker. And where it gets confusing is when I think I'm the striker and the franchisee thinks they're the defender. So if you want to become a successful franchisee versus being an entrepreneur, you're probably more the operating type of a person. You're the people person, the operating person. You just want to get in and operate. Versus if you're more the creative person, you want to control, you're more a strategic person, you may struggle a little bit being a franchisee.
Right. That's very interesting to hear, because one would think that that's exactly what's needed, the more strategy and so on. But I suppose being in the food and hospitality industry, you've got to be a people person and that sort of thing. Thank you for that. And I seem to have mixed up my franchisees and franchisors. I meant to say franchisee. Next question that we have is from Neo, and Neo says, what is the biggest failure that you have faced in the business and how have you recovered?
So I'd say the biggest failure or that I've had in certainly my career, and I've been with McDonald's for a long time, is in 2000, we closed 12 restaurants. It was a worldwide initiative. We had just crossed 100 restaurants. And at that time, for whatever reasons, for those that were in business in 2000, we went through that 99, 2000 economic slump. And maybe I wasn't as mature and as focused. Maybe I wasn't as brave as a leader as we were at the time. I certainly wasn't CEO. We also decided to close 10% of our weakest restaurants. And we had to retrench about 1,000 people. And why I say there was a failure is because all of those restaurants have reopened, not in the same position, but all of those restaurants have reopened. And some of those restaurants are the best restaurants in the country at the moment. So that's a major failure, and I guess a regret that I have in my life, not being brave enough, not having a long-term plan enough to just weather the storm a little bit and keep those restaurants open.
Right. Okay. Lerato wants to know, well, first off, she says, thanks for the great presentation, Greg. And she says, my kid hates going to Limpopo, specifically Mokopane, because there is no McDonald's there. There's no McDonald's there. How difficult is it to establish or open a franchise, especially in the remote areas?
So about 40 to 50% of our growth will remain in the urban areas. And that's not because we favor that. It's just that urbanization in the world is becoming so profound. The density of these big cities are becoming huge. I mean, I know we're running out of time, so I'll be quick. But 20 years ago, we thought we could open 4 ways in Woodmead for those that are in Gauteng. And we thought, well, we couldn't open up a restaurant in between them. Now we've got like 15 restaurants in between 4 ways in Woodmead. Mokopane is coming. I think it's coming. If not this year, it'll come next year. So good news for Mokopane. But that leaves 40% of our growth in the rural places. And not too far from Mokopane, we got Polokwane, we got Toandu. We're just looking at Sanin. We've opened up Puta de Chaba, Musina. So we're coming to the rural areas. We're coming quick.
Okay, thank you. Tando says, I used to go to McDonald's for a quick burger. These days, with plug-in offices, etc., I've enjoyed working from McDonald's, even meeting study partners and colleagues at McDonald's to work. It is starting to feel more inviting and office-like sometimes. The setup and the little corners where one can work for hours, that is great. What was the thinking around this, especially looking at where we are today?
Yeah, we called it zones, little zones, and we think maybe we've gone a little bit too far. We knew that when people come in and it's just one big play place for kids, back to that children question, where we could see the merging trends. And what are the emerging trends? I work from home, I travel in traffic, I wake up very early, and so now I can travel to beat the traffic, go to Woodmead McDonald's, check my emails, make a few phone calls before I get into the office, and by the way, have a nice healthy breakfast, which is scrambled eggs and a cup of coffee at the same time. So we saw that trend coming, and that's what we try to build our restaurants for, and that's why we've done it that way.
Okay. And that's a great example of forward thinking. I mean, it's almost as if you knew that we would run into COVID times where people would be forced to work from, it's not even really just working from home anymore. People sort of have to work from anywhere because sometimes at home there's no electricity. So you've got to find, a plan B, offices out of bounds and so on. That's a really big win for McDonald's. Sam says, Greg, most entities couldn't come back from after the lockdown regulations. Sorry, I'll start again. Most entities couldn't come back after the lockdown regulations were relaxed. What do you think happened to these entities going concern? And what happened to their mapped out business continuity plans? It's a lot of questions here. And what did McDonald's do differently to retain all stores and employees? I'll go back to the first question because there's a few questions packed into here. He says, what do you think happened to these entities going concern? That's the first question that he's posed.
So in our very small time, I'm going to give you a very holistic answer. So we didn't plan drive-through, but drive-through was the best thing for us because it's the most safe way to eat food right now. We just hand a bag out to you. So drive-through gave us a lifeline, and that was one of the big things why our curve went up. But sadly, many businesses have closed. But the bigger worry that I have is how many businesses are still to close in that next phase. We've now borrowed a lot of money. We've indebted ourselves. We've taken out debt. The question is, are our businesses going to come through strong enough? But those businesses that have closed, I'm delighted to say in true South African Ubuntu style, we come back with a different idea because we have tenacity, we have grit, and we have a non-give up attitude. So where one door closes, another door will open.
I'm not sure if we've covered this already. He says, what did McDonald's do differently to retain all stores and employees?
Well, we obviously had the UIF help, but for us, it was about drive-through and delivery, getting back as quickly as possible. Everybody took salary sacrifice. Everybody sacrificed at the same level, so we didn't have to lose anyone. So when we came back, then we were fighting fit, and drive-through and delivery did help.
Okay. Anonymous in capital letters wants to know, he says, please pose my question regarding the fast growing demand of people who care about the earth and God's creatures.
And Anonymous, this is the appropriate question to be asking because big businesses need to take accountability and responsibility and need to lead by example on what we're doing for the earth. And that's what McDonald's is doing. Where maybe we can have a different debate at a different time, because I can spend an hour on what we, as a big consumer of products, we have to give back to the world more than we take. And COVID has taught us that this world has taken more than it's given over the last 30 years.
Okay, we're running out of time, so I think we'll just take two more questions before we close. Abel says, thanks for the presentation. Does this new self-service approach ordering and payment processing, does this self-service approach at the stores in some Johannesburg stores lead to more customers in the backdrop of low adoption of tech in South Africa?
Does it lead to more customers? More customers are using our tech. I don't know if I got the question 100% right, no doubt. I pretty much say 80% of our customers that come into our restaurants are using the tech right now. So okay. I don't know if I answered the question 100% correctly.
Okay. And then Sophie would like to know, she says, thank you for your great presentation. In relation to sustainability and food waste, what steps does McDonald's take to ensure minimal food waste throughout the supply chain?
Well, all our packaging is biodegradable. So if you have a Big Mac and literally you throw the whole package and the Big Mac in the garbage, it's going to biodegrade. So from that perspective, we've pretty much got that under. But obviously, waste is very, very important for us. Too short of time for me to answer that question, but being responsible in the amount of water you're using and how we're wasting our products, and can our products go back into the world, back into the earth, and make sure that they don't harm us. It's very important to us.
Right. Okay, I see we are already at the top of the hour. That hour's gone by very, very quickly. Greg, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and close now. I want to greet everybody. First of all, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Heather Bangwayo. I'm the Senior Liaison Officer in the Alumni Relations Office at Wits. I'd just like to say thank you once again to Greg. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule as we near the end of the month. You've given us so much to think about and left us with valuable insight into a brand that has been part of all our lives, if most of our lives, if not all of us, since we were young. I distinctly remember many, many years ago, my niece who was sitting in her car seat, she's off to university this year. So this is going back some time. She was sitting in her car seat and she was crying for Loving It. I think that's what she called it at the time, because that was the jingle at the time, I'm loving it. So long before she could even pronounce McDonald's, she knew how to say Loving It. And that just speaks to the power of the brand that McDonald's is, the influence that it has on us adults who are now sitting and working and studying from your pods, right down to our little ones who can identify the big, I think you refer to them as the golden arches or the yellow arches. That is real influence. So thank you so much for your time today. I was very excited to have Greg speak to us today, and just give us a glimpse into what goes into steering and growing one of the world's most recognizable brands in a uniquely South African environment and during a pandemic. That's quite a lot. Thank you so much. What lessons could we learn? That's what I wanted to find out, what lessons we could learn from Greg and what we can expect in the coming months. And I think these are answers that we managed to get during today's session. And another thing that I was hoping to get, was a promise from Greg that the McFlurries would never ever be discontinued. That was just something that I was hoping he would touch on. Please don't ever touch those. Don't discontinue them. I see they come with Smarties now, which is really exciting stuff. But seriously though, Greg, thank you so much. I particularly enjoyed your point about influential leadership, being the kind of people that contribute to other people's lives and deliver on their promises, and being the kind of people that others can learn from. I think this is particularly true not only in professional settings, but in every interaction of our lives. This is the kind of leadership that grows and develops spaces in a healthy way, and also it's good to role model. I'd also like to thank Professor Taibenu, who is the head of School of Engineering, for opening today's event. Thank you so much. Thank you, Prof. We really appreciate your contribution today. And last but definitely not least, I'd like to thank everybody who made it to today's webinar. Some of you were streaming on YouTube, some are logged into the Zoom. Thank you so much for making time today. We continue to enjoy and to capitalize on this unexpected virtual consequence of not being able to physically gather at the Wits Club. This means that we're forced to meet virtually. But what that means is that we are able to have people from literally across the globe dial into this. Thank you very much for always making time for these webinars. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of today's event. We look forward to seeing you again in next webinar. Until then, please stay safe and keep warm. Good afternoon.